Have you ever felt so exhausted and drained that you're left questioning if you're burning out? Hi, I'm Flic Taylor, and my passion for burnout and self-care came about when I became a mental health writer who'd lost her mental health to extreme burnout. I know, the irony is not lost on me. Join me as I host Everyday Burnout Conversations, the honest podcast that shares the stories of others from all walks of life as they recover from, manage and avoid burnout by prioritising their mental health and well-being. Expect to hear fascinating conversations, plus positive and actionable tips and tricks that can help you make the simple life changes your mental health will thank you for. Episodes will be delightfully wrapped up in some epic truths and great humour. So, enjoy! Today I share an everyday burnout conversation with Laura Friedman Williams. Laura is a native New Yorker and author of the recently published book Available, a Memoir of Sex and Dating After a Marriage Ends. Now, Laura, she was happily married, stay-at-home, self-declared PTA mum of 3 children, and for nearly 3 decades she was living every inch of the life she dreamt of and had planned for. Then one day she discovered her husband was having an affair and found herself single after 27 years, which then set her on a new path of self-discovery. Her brilliant debut book shares her fabulous and unapologetic story of sex and dating after divorce. It's my favourite kind of memoir writing, as Laura shares a very funny, honest, frank and moving account of her sexual reinvention. So expect to have many laughs and then a few tears, as Available explores the various roles we take on through the course of our lives and how they come to define us. Laura's writing has been featured in the Financial Times, Cosmo, Vogue UK and the Daily Mail, to name a few. So without further ado, let's crack on with an everyday burnout conversation with Laura Friedman Williams.
So, Laura, this is such a treat to be able to chat to you on a Monday afternoon because, oh my gosh, reading your book has been incredible. It's my favourite kind of memoir. It's so raw and honest. It's, there's elements that are really uplifting and inspiring. And then you're just laughing throughout the whole of it. I thought I went from one chapter of laughing to the next, like in tears, and just texting my friends saying, you've got to read this book. You're going to feel so seen. So this is such a treat to be able to talk to you today, and I can't wait for more people to find your work and your book. So I was wondering, to start us off, could you tell us a little bit about how Life You Knew It was just gone within 48 hours?
Sure. And thank you for having me on, by the way. I listen to your podcast and I love your guests. And so it's really an honor for me to be here and get my turn to talk to you.
Yay!
So thank you. Okay. How did my life get turned upside down? Well, I was with my husband for 27 years. We had 3 children. I really thought my marriage was eternal and that we would grow old together. We sometimes joked about what kind of grandparents we would be. And I found some text messages on his phone one night that it was clear he was having an affair with another woman. And more than just having an affair, he was in love with another woman. And he had been thinking about leaving me for this other woman. And it was so shocking to me. I mean, even now thinking about it, I can't believe it happened. It was such a surreal experience to have gone from a life that I thought was really settled and happy and just, chugging along, and that he had a whole other life going. I think when you imagine infidelity, you think of it as it's betrayal. It's not just betrayal like sexually. It's just he totally betrayed the life that we were supposed to have and the life that we had. So I had a very intense reaction, which was just that I was obviously devastated. I think any woman would be, but I needed him out. It was like the marriage was over. It was just over. It was like over in a second. And I know that some women recover from infidelity, and I hoped that I might be one of them. But I think it was pretty apparent to me quickly that I wouldn't be. And so my 27-year relationship with this man ended overnight. Within 48 hours, he was gone. We had just moved into our home that was like a home that we had bought and renovated, like gut renovated, and that we expected we would live in for the rest of our lives. It was like our final nesting place after moving 8 times. And we'd lived there maybe 6 months together. And I sat in the living room and I watched him wheel his suitcase out.
Oh my goodness me.
Yeah.
Because you've shared how, like, being a mother, like, you know, the life you were living, that was your dream. That was your plan. Like, you just threw everything, your heart and soul, into being a mum and to being that kind of person. And then for it to just shatter. Yeah. I mean, my goodness, how did you even, I can remember reading the part where you said, like, you know, you would coach yourself and literally be like, you know, I've got to get out of bed and I've got to take it step by step. Yeah. How did you even summon that strength, Laura, you know?
Yeah, I think I was just so, numb is not the word, because I was the opposite of numb. It was like an outer body experience, but I was bereft. And I think what's really hard is I did, as you say, I really embraced the notion of happily ever after. Like you marry, you make a family. I really wanted kids. I wanted many kids, and I got lucky. I got 3 of them. And I really enjoyed my life. You know, I felt very lucky to have I had had a lot of bumps in my life. Like, it wasn't like this was the first, you know, thing that had happened to me. So, you know, my father died when I was very young. There was remarriage. There was complicated relationships in my family. So I really thought, I'm going to have the home that is the happily ever after. Right. What's really hard, it's terrible about any time in your life, is when you realize that you only can control your part of the narrative, and somebody else might take control of the rest of it. So when I found myself in this situation that I never imagined I'd be in, never wanted to be in, I never even thought about it. It was all coaching. It was like, I had to treat myself like I was my friend and say, like, okay, what would you do if you were coaching somebody and this was what was happening to her? This is what you would tell her. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel so beholden to my children. Like, they didn't ask for this. Yeah. They didn't ask to be caught in the crossfires. And even though I felt clear that my husband had done this, I was still their mother, and I still was participating in whatever way, and I needed them to cope. And the only way for them to cope was to see me coping. Yes. And I didn't do it. I'm not going to say I did it very gracefully. I don't think I did. I think, you know, looking back, I don't know how I got through those first days, weeks, months. It was brutal. But I did it, and they did it. And I think it was just a lot of telling myself, like, you have to do this. There's just no choice. You got to keep going. And I would tell myself, I wrote this in the book, what you put one foot down, you put the next foot down, and then you start moving. Yes. And that's it. You might feel like you're going to vomit. You might feel like you're going to pass out. You might feel angry. You might feel what the ground's going to swallow you whole. One foot in front of the next.
You see, it's funny, Laura, because when I was reading the book, I felt you were doing it so gracefully, because it's so difficult to have to process your own, it's almost like grief of your relationship and yourself, Absolutely. Your identity, as well as having to help guide your children. Because your youngest daughter, when she was sat in bed with you and she was like, is it 6 weeks yet? Is that 6 weeks finished yet? Like,
like, can he come home? Can Daddy come home?
Yeah, like, I thought you did an incredible job of just keeping going, because your older children kind of had their own emotions and reactions, didn't they? And you know, it's very, I thought you did a brilliant job.
Well, I thank you for that. Thank you for saying that. But like, we are, as mothers, so hard on ourselves, you know, and I really had thrown myself into the motherhood with a real sense of martyrdom. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It wasn't like I was walking around like, what I gave up for you guys, you know, it's not that, but it was more like I lived for my children. So every decision I made was guided by what was going to work or not work for them in my mind. And that meant going out in the evening. That meant stopping working, you know, when the second one was born. So to be in a position where I felt that, you know, my eldest daughter at the time was 17. So for me to be in a position where I've been a mother for 17 years And suddenly it's out of my control. I can't control their happiness. I can't fix this problem. And it was so terrifying to me to be in that position. But also I could see from them, they were on the one hand, like they didn't speak to their dad. They were super angry at him. The older ones knew what was happening. They were furious. And then after some time, they became furious with me because they wanted me to just take my old life back. They wanted to get back to where we had been. Like, okay, we hit this major bump and now we're just going to move on. And I couldn't do it. And then they were mad at me. So for me to be reduced in my children's eyes because of this action that my husband had taken, I was just reeling with anger. So it was really hard. I mean, when I say graceful, well, I'd always been like, in my mind, I'd really been like super mom. It's the PTA mom. And I was always hosting kids and parties and making Halloween costumes from scratch. And, so for me, like throwing a bowl of, Lucky Charms cereal in front of them for dinner, or like melting cheese on a tortilla chip and calling it a nacho, like that for me was a failure. That was my feeling that I was failing as a mother. Yeah. In hindsight, it's like, it's a miracle I made them lunch every day, but
it's so funny because, you talk about, you wanting to really have that cohesive, solid family unit because you wanted it to be a contrast to kind of what you'd experienced. You have an incredible mum who's inspired you, but you wanted to have something different.
Yes.
And reading it, like hearing about the melted cheese on the nacho chips and the Lucky Charms, I was literally reading it going, she did good. She did good because you were so authentically dealing with the situation. Because as a parent myself, it's really difficult to watch your kids kind of, experience real life in real time. You just want to protect them, don't you?
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my gosh, she did an incredible job of just role modeling how to really get in the moment and look after yourself. Lucky Charms, there it is. There's nothing wrong with that. Infuriating. But I know as a mum, for years, you just kind of want to give your kids all the nutrition and sit with them at the table and talk. But that moment, like Lucky Charms, this is the reality. Like everyone's got to hunker down. We've got to all process and look after ourselves together. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that because I think there is, when I look back at that time and I think about the kids, and it was my daughter's last year at home before going to college. And then my son was a freshman in high school. And then the youngest one was like 7. I feel like we were sort of on this life raft together. It was like we were all just like would wake up and be like, okay, it's another day that we have to survive. How are we going to do this? And I think there were a lot of things that we tried on for sides. We tried on anger. We tried on sadness. We tried on being victims. We tried shutting people out. We tried blocking and angry, blocking people on phones. We tried a lot of things. And sometimes it almost felt like we were sort of acting out the role. Like what would a bereft child sound like right now? What would a jilted wife sound like right now? Yeah, because who knows? You don't have those roles. You're not prepared for this. No. I mean, we were just, my kids were like totally selfish children, the way children are. And I don't mean that they're wonderful children. They're compassionate human beings, but they're going through life. It's all about them. It's all about, well, I'm a freshman in school and my work's really hard and I'm about to go to college and I'm about to have a prom and a graduation. It's all about me. And now my parents have taken from me because now it's all about just like my mom has to pick herself up off the floor. My dad's gone. How do we deal with these things? And I felt so bad. I felt just so terrible that like I'd done this to them, that I hadn't been able to protect them, that I couldn't fix it for them. So for me, like there were certain things I did gracefully. It came later. For me, the graceful part was forgiving their dad so that they could forgive him too. That was where the grace came in. It wasn't in the early days of like looking, like hiding in the pantry, doing shots of tequila while trying to serve them those Lucky Charms. Like those weren't my finest moments, but I got through. My finer moments were in saying like, okay, now it's time for us to move forward as a family and I'm going to show you how it's done.
Yes, exactly. It's like, obviously you use a lot of humor throughout the book in talking about your situations. And as a Brit, I get that. It's kind of what we do.
I love that.
And now I live in North America and Canada. I'm kind of like hyper aware of that's what we do. And sometimes people look at me strangely. But you talk about how you've always used humor and you've always looked for the silver linings, and actually how difficult it is to sit in the pain.
Yeah, that was really...
How did you do that? How did you do that? Well,
I didn't really have a choice, I guess. Right. So, I mean, I think, silver linings, I love them. I'm an optimist. I'm a hopeless optimist, truly hopeless. The things I believe could happen are just amazing. And I, my daughter is the one, my eldest daughter said to me once, like, it's really annoying, your silver linings, because you never can let us be upset. You're always in fix it mode. It's always like, look at the bright side. Well, I don't want to look at the bright side today. Right now, I feel crappy, and I want to just feel crappy. And so I learned to just say, okay, I can't find the silver lining. It's not there. For me, I just didn't exist, the silver lining. I felt totally reduced. So what can I do? I'm just going to stay in this pain until it abates. And so my friend had told me this mantra, the only way out is through. And it's very common. I think a lot of people know this mantra, but I had never heard it before. And I thought about it 400 times a day. I would say it to myself. I would think, I'm here now. I'm sitting in this pain. I'm drowning in sorrow, but I believe there is an out. I have to go through this, and then there will be another side. So it was very uncomfortable, and it was really hard. I couldn't offer silver linings. I couldn't find, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but I still had faith that it existed, that the end would come. It took a long time. And you just have to sit with it. I mean, actually, one of your guests said recently, Laura Jane Williams, which makes me laugh because she and I often get like confused, like people, because I'm Laura Friedman Williams, people call me Laura Jane Williams. And I'm like, nope, haven't met her. She's an amazing writer. She's been around a lot longer than me. I'm sure she's not thrilled with getting confused for me, but whatever. But she said something I thought was really interesting about doing nothing. Like when you're not sure what to do nothing, just sit with it. And it doesn't mean like, don't be active in your recovery. It means that sometimes being active means just sitting back, that there's not always an answer. So that was huge for me to understand that there's not always an answer. Sometimes things are just crappy, and you just got to say, I'm sorry. Now, that being said, I also have a time limit on how long I'll let myself feel bad. So now that I'm sort of on the other side, it's been 3.5 years. I still have a lot of really bad days, where I feel really bad. But I sort of give myself amount of time that I'm going to wallow in it and cry and just be like, totally give myself over to it. And then I'm like, okay, time's up. Time to move on. Okay. The time is up. No more. You can still feel sad, but you're not going to wallow anymore.
Right.
And I literally set it like a time.
Really? You're like, okay, that's it. Time is going on. That's all you're going to get.
It's like tomorrow at midnight, you have 36 hours. You do whatever. You can be as miserable as you want, eat all the ice cream you want, whatever you want to do. Cry to your friends, feel sorry for yourself, but then it's over. You can still feel crappy. You can't control, but you pick yourself up. You find the other side of it. You find the silver lining and you persevere.
Amazing. Because you can really wallow, can't you?
You sure can.
Yeah, I know.
Yep.
I know.
Yeah. And you know what it looks like when people wallow. It's not, then you're really stuck. And so that tunnel for me, what I envisioned when I said the only way out is through, I envisioned a very long tunnel. And I would often imagine myself slogging through it. And it was always a question for me. Am I at the beginning, the middle, the end? Can I see that there's a little bit of light? Like, is it muddy here? So I often think about it like sort of like, slogging through this like mud. It's so viscous. It's hard to get through. Are you making it harder for yourself? Or can you at least like be in the dark place, but maybe not going through the mud? Can you just make it a little easier on yourself by just saying, this is really hard, but also like a lot of other people have it worse. And also a lot of people love me. And like, also I'm still here.
Oh my God, that's a bloody powerful visual. That's fantastic.
It worked. Sure, it was powerful because it worked for me. It did.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's really good. And because you can feel very lonely walking through that tunnel, can't you? But to remind yourself that you have people you're loved. You have people behind you, because you talk about your lovely friends, chatting with you and supporting you. And also, you kind of had like some therapy and like, couples therapy as well as your own talk therapy. And I think that kind of really helped you. I have to say, Laura, there was a part in the book, and it just, the hairs on my arms just stood up. It really touched my heart and I'll read it out, because you say, when you're talking to your therapist, and you say to her, what if I'm so lost that I can't remember who I am or find myself in here? What if I'm lost forever? Oh my God, look, my hairs are going up now.
Makes me want to cry.
It does, because I think we've all had a moment like that, and it's just heartbreaking to think of someone else experience that. You just want to kind of hug them. And your therapist said, no, it's not possible. Right here, and she pointed to your heart, you are here. Look inside. You're too strong to have disappeared. Find yourself, embrace yourself. That's the part no one can ever take from you. That will always be there for you. You know who you are. Oh my God, like I'm tearing up. And the words afterwards, you said, I was wounded, but I wasn't dead.
Yeah. I mean, I feel it now. I'm holding my heart. I definitely have a lot of times where I feel things and I like hold on to my heart, and I think like I've got myself, in good ways and in bad ways. I think what I learned, and what that therapist gave me permission to not be that flattened woman on the ground who couldn't pick herself up. She gave me permission to sort of be myself and to be bold in many ways, because she said, you don't have to be reduced. You're not gone. And in fact, she said something else to me that was really great. I would talk about being damaged goods. I used that terminology, and she would say, I really don't like that terminology. You're not damaged. Damage implies that something is wrong with you and it's permanent. You're just going through a hard time. So I tried to reframe things for myself that way. She was amazing that way. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, for better or for worse, we really have to rely on ourselves. So what I found out was, in a very painful way, you can have all the love in the world, and I had so much of it from my family and my friends, but you got to get yourself out of bed in the morning. And, when your kids are crying and they're mad at you because you're the problem now, and they're saying to you, you're the problem, you're not letting dad back. And so our family's broken now because of you. No one is there to be like, actually, let me set the record straight for you. Yes. You have to, when you get into bed at night, the thoughts that are in your mind and the person that you are living with, it's just you. Yeah. So I feel like you have to know both sides. One is that you have to be able to, that you are alone. It is lonely. You can have all the love and companionship in the world. I have 1 million people. I'm so lucky. I can pick up the phone right now and call, 10 best friends who will help me, and they will help me. But the decisions you make, this really big decisions of your life, and, the way that you behave, that's on you. No one can do that for you. So that was shocking to me. I don't think I'd ever realized that. Like when you have a partner and you're married and you're with a man, like as long as I was, and you consider it a partnership, you're never alone. I never thought of myself as being alone. Everything was in tandem. Like we decide everything together. And now all of a sudden I have to make decisions for myself that are hugely life altering. And I remember actually the morning I finally told him that I wanted a divorce. Yeah. I said, we should talk. We went to the park and I was like, so what are we doing? We haven't gone back to couples therapy. Like it's been a few months. Like we haven't really talked about getting back together. And he was like, I don't know what you want. Like I can't read you. I don't know what you want. And I was like, okay, I guess this is over then. I guess we're done. And it was like, again, it was like my last attempt to be like, tell me what to do. Like, let's be a team. And that it was gone.
Yeah. Incredible. And something I really got as well was the permission you gave yourself to pay attention to yourself. And that really comes through at the very beginning of the book. Like I just loved how you opened and you start talking about number one. I was just like, I was rooting for you. I was like,
Thank you.
I love this guy. I love his approach. He was kind. And
He was.
I was just like, this guy, fantastic. Like from the very get-go of your book, you can't help but root for you, and you're just like applauding. You're just like, come on, Laura.
I love that. He was very decent. He was a very decent human being. He was.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that you kind of was like, right, that's it. I'm going to go out, and you were really putting yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And doing it like with such courage. But you did it, and it was in honor of yourself, your self-love. Like that was amazing.
Yeah, I know. Again, it's like, I don't even know where it came from. I think it came from an absolute determination to get through to the other side. I just couldn't believe that this was like what my life was going to be now, that I was going to be this really like unhappy, reduced version of myself. I mean, if I wasn't going to use the word damage, what I would say was I was sort of a shadow of myself. And so I think I sort of thought about the things I liked about myself, the things I'd always really liked about myself, but I didn't think that much about myself. I mean, going through life, raising my kids, being my husband's wife or my parents' daughter, I never was like, oh, you're really whatever. Like I thought I was funny, but like my kids told me all the time I wasn't. So, they kept me in check. I mean, I thought I was a great singer also. And they were like, nobody should ever hear your voice. It's, like definitely have the worst voice in the family. So I thought lots of things. And my kids were constantly like, nope, not so, not so. So I'd given, I think I didn't think about it. And now all of a sudden I'm a single woman. I'm not attached to anybody. I have to present myself, and I have to sort of look at myself and think, well, what can I say that's nice about myself? I'm honest. I'm a really honest person. I don't lie. And I think my heart is often on my sleeve, and my feelings are on my face. So even when I try to lie, people are like, oh my God, like your reaction was, like you could just see it. And my kids sometimes are like, you got to get a poker face. Like sometimes it's so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing. I thought that, okay, I'm a kind person. I'm a good friend. I have good friends. So probably I've been a good friend. Yeah. I'm open. I'm curious. I'm an open and curious person. If you sit down with me, I'll probably have lots of questions for you, and I'll want to know you, and I want you to know who I am at my core and what's really important to me. So I think I really just started kind of giving myself little pep talks to say, like, you have a lot of special things about you. And those things are going to be the things that you hold on to. And we'll see what happens. And so it was like, just like I say, it was like jumping into cold water. You're so out of your body anyway. My whole life I'd been with somebody. Like I'd had, from the time I was 17 on, I had a boyfriend or my husband. Yeah. So here I am, 47, I'm in midlife, and, it's like sink or swim time. Yeah. But I knew I had it in me. I just knew it. I just felt that I was strong enough, determined enough. And also that I wanted to live, honestly and happily.
And live and thrive, not just live. Yes. And I think from my perspective anyway, Laura, I'm reading your book and thinking, oh my gosh, you lost your marriage, but my goodness, you find your writing voice. Yeah. Like the world is a better place for your writing. Like, do you know what I mean? What a gift to us. I know it. Wow. Sheer hell to go through, but look at where you are now. Yeah. And it was hell for sure. Yes. Yeah. But it's so inspiring, because I think anyone listening, whatever has led you to a point where you're just kind of depleted, where you're just lost, where you've forgotten who you are. Yeah. It's a very dark, scary, lonely place to be in. Yeah, I think we've mentioned the word lonely a lot, and it's true, because I think it's like, no matter who loves you and what kind of support you have, you really are living with yourself. And it's very dark when it's not, and it's also hard. It's just hard to come to terms with it. I think that I know myself pretty well, that I'm doing a great job as a mom. I'm a supportive wife. I think all these things. Yeah. And yet the person who makes up the other 50% of me thinks something totally different,
because he's had to go off-roading in order to make his life feel fulfilling. Yeah. So how is it that was enough for me and it wasn't enough for him? So those are things, honestly, sometimes I still grapple with it. But I do think, the strength we can find after anything that brings us to our knees is really incredible. And as I've said it before, and I'll say it again, no matter what hell I went through, no matter how painful, and continues often to be painful, I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't take it back, because I do feel that I had lost myself, that I lost myself to motherhood. I lost myself to being someone's wife. I lost myself to, the PTA and to running my home and to, having my girlfriends and whatever it was. I had lost myself, like who I really was deep down, that person that you go to bed with, that person you wake up with. And I feel like I have found her. I've located her. I'm still finding her. And imagine if I had never had the chance to do it. And I would never have had that if my husband hadn't had an affair. So I have gratitude for it. I feel very and it's not just free. I feel very in touch with myself now.
Yes.
That's what I appreciate.
And that really comes through, because at the end, you just left. I was in such awe of you, because I thought, my gosh, she 150% wholeheartedly loves herself. Yeah. And I don't know how many people today have had that experience that have led to that point, who can, I'm just thinking of friends and family and co, do you really love yourself? I don't know. It's interesting, isn't it? Because you're right. We don't have that time to sit with ourselves and really, be with ourselves. And incredible.
It's hard. And I didn't want it. I mean,
yes,
it wasn't like I was driving this train. And if anybody had told me before I found out, before, my life changed, if anybody had said, this is going to happen to you, I would have been like, absolutely not. My life is great. My life is grand. Everything is exactly where it should be. And we are like the model couple, and that is not happening to us. And if it does happen to us, I mean, I definitely wouldn't have thought that I'd have written a book about it, and that I'd go out and have tons of sex. I mean, these are not things I would have imagined. It's kind of amazing what happens when your story changes if you are willing to change direction. You have to be willing.
You do, because you said you were someone who, you wouldn't go against the grain.
No.
You kind of said I was a bit of a good girl. It's
Absolutely.
Interesting that you then kind of went on this journey to really fully embrace yourself and really kind of be in situations that you have never explored before.
Yeah. It's funny. I looked back at my life. I really thought back to the time I was a teenager, and I thought, every once in a while I would do something that was kind of unexpected, that was like a little bit bold, a little bit more bold than anybody would expect me to do, or a little bit outside the grain. And they were such fleeting moments. I never really thought about it. So it was almost like I just became myself. You know how people say when you see people who are older, really, into their 80s and 90s, and they'll just sort of say anything. And sometimes you laugh because you think, oh my God, that person just became so much more themselves as they got older. Yes. They're still exactly the person they were, just they're more, even more so, condensed. And that's how I started to feel about myself. I was that person. I had been that person. She was there all along, but she was so silenced by the roles that she took on. So I'd forgotten that I could be independent. I'd forgotten that I could write, that I liked sex. I'd sort of forgotten about all these things. So it all came as a real shock to me, but also oh yeah, you used to do these things. They used to make you happy. They used to make you fulfilled. And that's all you. That's not you and someone. It's just you. So, I think it was sort of, in many ways, it was I did an about face, but it was also becoming my own self. And I think that's a lot about midlife also. And one of the beauties of being in midlife. Yeah. And one of the great things about aging is that we really can just say, screw it. This is who I am. I feel pretty confident at this point that I know who I am. deep down, and who I can attract and who I'm attracted to. And for everybody else, just, whatever.
Yeah, that whole kind of, this is who I am, unapologetically.
Yes.
I mean, it's a beautiful thing. This is why you're writing so beautiful, because you are unapologetically writing from the heart. And it's just so beautiful to read, it's incredible. So, here you are. So how long has it been since you split up from your husband?
It's been 3.5 years.
You see, that's incredible, Laura. 3.5 years. I'm amazed that you have been able to experience, process that, and then write this incredible book. It's hard being honest in writing. How did you do that?
Yeah. As I said before, I'm a very honest person. It never occurred to me to do it any other way. I think one of the things that I feel, I've had friends tell me over the years is that they would appreciate how honest and open I was about my own experiences and my family's experiences. So even though there was a lot of great stuff happening for us, I was very honest also about any struggles that we had as a family, academically, with anxiety, depression, things that afflicted us or affected us. I was always very honest about it. There's this and it's great, but there's also this and it's hard. So I don't think that I ever tried to pretend that things were like sunshine and roses where they weren't. I think I've always tried really hard to give a well-rounded view. And that's what I really tried to do in the book, because I realized to just write a book, to sit down and write a book about all this great sex I'm having, it's funny. I mean, a lot of it was funny because I was fumbling. I had no idea what I was doing. And a lot of the men had no idea what they were doing. We're all newly single and in our 40s, 50s, 60s, and we're bumbling along. And some of it is just very comical. Looking back, I'm like, God, it's so crazy that all that stuff happened to me so that I'd have some material to write a book. Because if the dog hadn't watched me having sex, if I hadn't jumped to get away from, someone's teenage daughter and broken a rib, what would I have written about? So all of that stuff gave me really good material, but that was part of the story. And the other part was I was reeling. I was, devastated. And that's still true 3.5 years out. I am in a much better place. I feel content most of the time. I feel at peace. I feel connected to my 3 children. I feel like I've learned a lot. I'm so grateful for all of it. Does that mean that I never feel insecure, that I don't have imposter syndrome, that I still don't look at couples who are married and think, why couldn't I have made that work? Even though I don't want to go back to it, even I don't want it back. I don't want him back, and I don't want to be married again. But that doesn't mean I don't look at couples and think, why?
Sorry.
Why not me?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
No worries.
Oh, I'm back. Okay. Sorry. It came up with the FaceTime. I'm like, no, I'm not doing a FaceTime.
Technological help. IT department.
Oh my God. You think I'd get this sorted by now? Oh dear. You know what, Laura? I loved what your mum said to you when you were like, okay, I've written this book, and she's been a huge, supporter of yours and really encouraged you. Share what your lovely mum said to you when you were like, Mum.
Yeah. I mean, my mom is turning 80 this year, and she's an interesting person because she's such a good role model. She's so successful, and, she was such a pioneer in her own field, and always worked, and this very strong woman. Yeah. But she also really believed you had to be married. You needed a man. And I sometimes quote her as saying any man is better than no man at all. And it was the way that she, was
generation. Yes.
Yeah. So when I told my mom about the book, we'd never been very open about sex. We'd never talked about it. I mean, she asked me if I had birth control 3 years after I was already sexually active. And I was like, yeah, I got it. So when I told her about it, I said, so I wrote this book proposal, and I think I'm not going to do anything with it. And I feel super sad about it because it's just too much. I don't, you can't read it, and the kids can't read it. And she was like, well, tell me about it. And I'm like, well, it was about my adventures, dating. Oh, okay. That sounds fun. And having sex. Well, okay. And having a lot of sex. Oh, okay. And then having more of it, Mom, I really went a little wild. I just want you to know, you wouldn't want to read it. I kind of really just sowed my wild oats. And she like did not bat an eye. She was like, okay. And I said, but you'll be so embarrassed. And she said, I'll never be embarrassed by anything you do. I'll only ever be proud of you. And I was like, okay, then the kids will be embarrassed. And she's like, okay, so that your kids will be embarrassed. They're not going to die of embarrassment. You've taught them to be resilient, and they will be. They'll get over it. And you'll show them what a good role model you are, but you'll model confidence and strength. And so I said, okay, Mom, if I write this book, you can never read it. And she said, okay, so I'll never read it. Or maybe I will. And then I'll be very jealous of everything you did that I never did.
I just love that. I mean, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, my mom is, it was pretty, and actually I have to say as a follow-up, so, it's been out since June, and she's got a copy, she was like the first one to order the book, and she's got a copy on her shelf. And she said to me the other day, so she was talking about my aunt. She said she's reading the book and she's really enjoying it. You know what? I've decided I'm just going to read it. I'm tired of not knowing what's in this book. I'm going to read it. And if you need to flag some sections that you don't think I should read, then, you can do that. And I said, well, it's going to be a lot of flag sections, Mom, but sure. I said, just give me a whole pack of Post-its. And she said, that's fine. But I still want to read it. And I have had her listen to some of the podcasts, even where I'm talking pretty vocally about what my sex life had been like in married life. And since then, and I just don't, I don't really feel embarrassed by it anymore. I don't necessarily think my mom needs to know like what I think about oral sex, but, or like the state of my pubic hair. Like, I don't necessarily think that she needs to know that, but the fact that she now understands that I have been very sexually active the last years and that I've really found myself sexually, it's fine. I'm like, I've said to my kids, I've said it to my mom, like, it's fine. I don't know why I was so embarrassed about it to begin with. There's no shame in this. So I feel like,
absolutely.
I'm so grateful that my mom she didn't just give me permission. She gave me a push. Like, how are you going to feel if you don't do this? And I thought, well, I'm back in a box. I'm back in the box I was in before.
And this is what struck me when you said like a guiding principle in your life is to have no regrets, like to not regret, and that you really do stand by that. And I think your book is a beautiful testament to that. You know? Yeah.
I think regret seems to me the one thing that you just can't live with, right? Because everything else I guess feelings come and go. But if you had the feeling that you should have done something and you didn't do it, you really have to make peace with it. Yeah. And that's hard. And I think, this is sort of the philosophy of why my third daughter was born, 8 years after my second child was born. And I didn't want to regret not having a third baby. I really wanted another baby. I felt like I wasn't done being a mother to young children. Okay. And so I said to my husband, like, let's try, and hopefully it won't work. And then we don't have to have another baby, but we can say we tried and there's no regrets because you can't regret it. It just didn't happen. And he was like, great idea. And then I was 5 minutes later, I was pregnant. I mean, it was like unbelievable. And I was like, oh, how did this happen? And I told my mother, and she goes, I see you kind of like played Russian roulette. And I said, yeah, kind of. Like I was hoping not to win. So it is very much, I think, how I make certain decisions. Like if I think I'm going to worry about this later, I think I just have to do it now. And of course that baby is now 11 years old and the best thing that's ever happened to me. So, yes. I mean, aside from my other kids, but she was like an amazing addition to our family and I would never have done it any other way. And it was the same thing with the book. It was like, you cannot write the book or you can write it and live with the consequences of it, whatever it may be, that you're basically walking down the street naked. You basically have to accept that people are going to know everything about you, that you're like completely exposed yourself and see what that feels like, or always wonder. And I just didn't want to always wonder. Yeah. No, now I'm not wondering. Now everybody knows everything.
The thing is, though, Laura, like so many people are going to read this book and feel really seen.
I hope so.
You're there, we're talking about it being very vulnerable and putting yourself out there. And I know how hard that can be with writing. But at the same time, well, it wouldn't be any other way. Like, but this is what happened. So, but what, you want me to edit what happened?
Right.
but it makes people like they can really relate to it. And a lot of people, you probably get a lot of people saying to you, like, you know, you articulated what had happened to me. This is how I experienced it.
Yeah.
I can really relate to that. And so that's why it's so important that you've written this incredible book.
Yeah, I know. I'm happy about that. I'm happy because I felt so alone when I found out about my husband. I didn't have any friends that this had happened to. I didn't have a net, you know, I had friends, but not who understood this situation. And, you know, people would say, well, if this happened to me, and I was like, you have no idea what it would feel like if this happened to you, because I know I had no idea. And now I have some totally different feelings about it. It's so much deeper than I ever could have imagined. It's not just like, oh, he cheated on me, had sex with another woman. Like that is skimming the surface of what an affair is. And so I hope, you know, that I can give some people an ability to find themselves, just like I've read a lot of memoirs where I also appreciate when people talk about the difficulties of motherhood, you know, that it's not all like just loving your kids and feeling their breath on you as they're falling asleep. That's wonderful. But it's also sometimes like you just think like, why did I do this? Why did I have these people? Like now I got to take care of them for life ever. So I just feel like I'm very interested at this point in my life. I'm 51 now. I'm single. I'm dating somebody, and he knows that I really just want to date, and like I'm really not interested in being married again or living with somebody even. I'm at a point in my life where the one thing that matters to me above everything else is authenticity. And that I remain authentic to who I am, and I remain authentic to the words that I say. I'm allowed to change, but this is how I feel today. I feel really empowered. I feel really strong. I feel heartbroken still. And this is the truth of how it feels to be a middle-aged woman. This is how it feels to be me, you know, and that's most important to me to say is like, I can't just write this book that says, I got divorced and had sex with tons of men and had the time of my life. I did, but I also sometimes feel really sad that my marriage didn't make it, or that my kids don't have a cohesive home, or that I have to talk about who's going to be with who for Thanksgiving. That makes me sick. So I just wish, like when I look at people's Instagrams or I see things like the, reality shows, I really don't watch them very often because I don't want to know anything that's not authentic. I want to know the real whole story. I don't want to know half the story.
Absolutely. It's like the pretty stuff, not interested. Like, give me, the real. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I was on it. This is so funny to me. I was on this, I'm like a Peloton junkie, and I was taking a ride this morning, and it was the Bruno Mars song on Leaving the Door Open. Okay. And the instructor said, oh, this song could be written for my husband. He leaves the door open. And I was thinking, oh, this is so sappy. Like, oh, he's the best. He leaves the door open. His heart is open. His mind is open. And then she said, he literally leaves every door open. Like the door is open to the pantry. The door is open in the refrigerator. The door is open. He doesn't close a single door. I thought this song, and I was like, thank you for keeping it real. I just loved that she kept it real. It wasn't sappy at all. It was literally like, close the door.
Close the bathroom door, for God's sake.
And I love it when you think you're about to get just a mouthful of sugar and it comes out as something else. Because that's, for me, that's very real. Like we know you love him. You're married to him. We get it. Don't tell us that. I don't want to know about that. I want to know how you can't bear to hear him chewing. Like, that's what I want to know. But that you do it anyway, that you're still in it, it's not easy.
Oh, fantastic. So you're now at a point, I mean, I understand those feelings of, every so often, even the feelings of, this is one I struggle with, like the guilt and shame of being in a situation. Like, people don't really talk about that, do they?
Yeah.
And they're hard ones to fight off, because there's a half of you that thinks I have nothing to feel guilty or shameful about. But oh my gosh, they naturally show up in the room and you're like, oh, you're here again.
Yeah, totally. Those words, guilt and shame.
Go away.
How I wish I could bury those so far underground. Those are really, that's really hard. I mean, guilt, I grew up in a house where guilt was really an effective tool, so I understood that. And I really always determined that would not be like my mothering style, that it was like, if the kids had something else to do on Mother's Day or my birthday and they couldn't be around, like send me a nice note, tell me you love me and go live your life. There's no guilt, you're not beholden to me. I raised you to go live your life. Yeah. And there's no guilt about calling me or coming home to me or being there when I say you have to be there, whatever. And the guilt of moving on in my life, that was really hard. My kids, they weren't happy with me moving on. There was a lot of guilt. I still feel guilt. I mean, I still, like this past weekend, I had the man that I've been dating for 3 years. Yeah. He came upstate with me and my daughter and her 2 friends this weekend. It was the first time, so 3 years we've been dating. It was the first time we ever did something like this together. Wow. It was the first time he ever slept in the house with me while the kids were home. That's how long it's taken me to get to this point. Yeah. And because there's so much guilt, like I want to be, when I'm with my children, I want to be a mother 100%. And I also don't want my children to feel embarrassed. Like I don't want my 11-year-old to feel like embarrassed that her mother has this man in her bedroom that's not her father. So all of those things come into play. So I thought, well, we'll try this. And, it was another like learning curve for us. Like there were great things about it. And there were things that we were like, ooh, this is a little hard, because there's a lot to figure. And I don't know if it's what I want. I can't say that I want us to be so commingled. I sort of like having my life separate. But the guilt and the shame, those are powerful. And I think that the shame, especially, like one of the things that I feel really good about in talking about sex so openly now is that I actually don't feel any shame about it anymore. I think there's nothing wrong with saying, I like to have sex and I'm not hurting anybody. Yeah. So period.
And I really saw that because as you go through your journey, I was kind of watching the scales and I was like her self-love is really rising to the top. It's just going to dampen out that bloody guilt and shame and all that. Yeah. And so you must feel very strong and robust these days because I feel you did so much work.
I did so much work, but it's funny when I talk to my kids, I'm very open with my kids about sex and I really let them know, like when they were sort of embarrassed by the book, but I was like, look, I'm a woman who likes to have sex. What's embarrassing about that? I'm not married anymore. I'm single. Like, why shouldn't I? What would you rather me be doing? So that was part of my having to go through it with them. So they themselves could lose the shame and embarrassment and just say, okay, so my mom wrote a book about her sex life, big deal, which they can do now. They'll 3 out of 3, even the little one. But you just said something else and now I'm forgetting what it was that I wanted to, about feeling strong and robust. Life just keeps going, right? So I feel, am I strong and robust right now? I mean, the last few months have been really hard for me. My father died in June. I had to move out of my apartment. My son left for college and is 3,000 miles away from me now. COVID, has happened to all of us.
Lots of change.
So there's been lots of change for me personally and lots of change in the world. So there are parts of me that feel like, yeah, I did it. I look at my book and I think that's mine. I did it. And, I bought a new apartment for myself, which will be the first place I've ever lived in my adult life. But in the meantime, I'm living in my mom's second room, my mom's guest bedroom, because my apartment is months behind schedule and my daughter and I needed a place to stay. Right. So, we're living at grandma's. So in some ways I feel very strong and empowered. Yeah. Like I've told my truth and it's out there and the world didn't end. My kids still love me. Yes. My mom is not ashamed. All of these things are true, but life has just kept going. Like I didn't get to just say, and that's the end of the story. The end of the story is I wrote the book, I came alive, and that's the end. The rest of my life just kept going. Parenting, being a daughter, COVID, dad, all of it, working, having to make a living. That just keeps going. So I feel absolutely strong. I feel empowered. I feel independent. Amazing. I feel like I can do it. I feel like I can do anything. Yes. But I also still feel like, there's life is hard. Life is just hard.
It is. But for me, I'm thinking, it's just starting for her. I want to read more. I hope you're going to be able to start writing more. And
Thank you. I do feel that way. I feel like things are, I do feel like there's a new chapter and I'm going to move into this new apartment. It's going to be the first home I've ever owned and lived in on my own as an adult. I mean, I'll have my daughter still with me, but, as the only adult present. And I want to make a living. I haven't worked in, really outside the home in 20 years. And making money is really empowering and wonderful, and getting to decide what you do with it. And I could do anything. I don't know. I mean, someone has to want me to do it, but I don't know what's next. And it was so strange for me, who always had everything so buttoned up and tied down and scheduled, is not knowing is thrilling instead of terrifying.
Yes, just like you walking into that bar and getting a ticket to see that gig that night. Yeah. Like that very first chapter. Like, it's just, you know what, I'm just going to go for it, see what happens. And just incredible things have happened.
Like you just fling yourself out to the universe, be nice to people, put on a big smile, be open, be curious, and things may actually just come your way. It's, and I've seen that that's true. I mean, sometimes I just think, I can't believe this. Like, I can't believe I have my own home. I can't believe I wrote a book. I can't believe that my children and I all have these really wonderful relationships, because it was really rocky for a while. I can't believe I'm dating someone who cooks for me. That was like such a bucket list item for me. I know honestly, he's totally spoiled me. I don't know how I'll ever date anybody else again, because he can shop, he can cook, and he can clean. And it's like, I don't know, where do you go from there? It's like, I'm done. So I feel, it's very exciting to just say, like, okay, I'm 51. I got lots of years ahead of me, and let's just see where this goes. I have confidence now in the universe. I do. It's that light at the end of the tunnel, you have to go through it. The only way out is through. It's like, am I out? I don't think you ever get out, but you can see the opening for sure. You can keep walking toward the light.
You can. And for those listening who are at the beginning of that tunnel, at the middle of that tunnel, you can't see this because you're listening, but I'm looking at Laura. You are glowing. You are just this beam of light. So if you're in the middle of the tunnel,
lovely. Thank you.
Keep going. Keep going.
Yes. And I think the word that I like to tell people is patience. It's time. You cannot rush time. Time just has to pass. And the time heals so many things, but you have to be patient. You just have to kind of sit it out and be patient. You will get there. Most people get there. Most people get to the other side who want to and who are determined to, but you can't, it's a process. And you might really just have to feel terrible before you feel better. Take the step back before you take the step forward. Use whatever visualization works for you, but it works. You visualizing the words or the images, it really helps. It replaces the negative, it replaces the negativity that we're so quick to go through our heads of, this is not going to work out. I'm panicked. I can't do this. How am I going to you got to shut those voices up. And the only way to do it is with positive words. That's why I listen to 8,000 podcasts, because they make me feel motivated. I know everyone has a hard story. I love hearing people's stories of and hearing how they persevere.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's lovely to hear someone tell their story, which is why it was lovely that you've narrated your own book. I love that you've narrated the audiobook.
Yes,
when I was telling my dentist the other week, and I said, they said, but I do like to listen to books on the way to work. I was like, it's okay. She's narrated it. It's going to be fabulous.
That was such a funny experience for me, narrating my own book, because, I was like, okay, so I finally learned how to say certain words, but I wrote them down. It's different when you're saying them out loud. And with two men on the headset with you, the producers on the headset with you. So you're, now I'm like, well, I pretended to be this like totally liberated woman. And now I just got to keep going. I got to go through with it.
I'm going through another layer now. Hang on a minute.
when I'm talking about sexual term or, dirty talk, and I've got to say it with two men on the headset, but I did. I powered through. Yet another thing I could do.
You did it.
I did it. Yep.
Oh my goodness.
And patience. Now patience and words can just roll off your tongue. Words you couldn't say before can just roll off your tongue. You won't even blush.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Incredible. Oh my goodness. It has been such a treat talking to you today.
Oh, thank you so much.
Laura. This has been amazing.
You have such positive energy, and it's so lovely to be around. I feel like I would like to speak to you every morning and get a little bit of your energy. and go on with my day.
It's so funny because when you read someone's memoir and it's so authentic and unapologetically themselves like you did, I feel like I know you, Laura.
Yes.
I feel like, it's just Laura who I see every day.
Yeah,
like,
you do. You know me.
I sit down with a cup of tea and go through stuff.
But I think that's how I feel why I like listening to certain podcasts, because I hear the voices. I kind of know what, it's going to be funny, or it's going to be open, it's going to be warm. It's like, I feel the same way when I listen to you. If you keep listening, you touch on so many different parts of life, on liking someone's writing, on their children, on their work, on balance in life. So I feel the same way. And I think like it's just lovely to be part of a community of people who just keep lifting each other up.
Absolutely. I cherish the day we connected on Instagram. Yes. That was fantastic. This is where social media is really good. I
totally agree with you. It's not all bad. It's not all bad. You could really find your cheerleaders on there, and it's and that gets you through the day, and you get to be someone else's cheerleader too.
Yes,
social media is good for that. Just keep it not cheerful, but cheering on. No negativity. Yes. Be honest. Don't just show half of your life. Show the ugly parts too.
We don't want to see the polished stuff, do we? No. Let's see the real stuff.
Although honestly, maybe I could post one polished picture of myself. It might not kill me. I mean, I don't know.
Darling, the light that is beaming from you, that's all you need.
Okay. Wow. Thank you. Just totally, that's love. I mean, really lovely. Coming from you, especially, who is,
I'm
ray
now
of sunshine.
thinking, God, do I need a Peloton? Like,
I do love my Peloton. I feel like I should get a cut every time someone buys one. I feel like I should get a percentage. So I'm such a good spokesperson for it. Love that thing. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
I want to be an influencer, a Peloton influencer.
Done. Sign us up. Now, I've been ending every interview with some quick-fire, light-hearted questions if you're up for joining in.
Of course.
So, Laura, on your dodgy, tough days, do you opt for lemon in water or lemon in gin?
Gin.
Done. Check.
I can't believe that's a question. Gin, 100%.
Oh, fantastic. Now, I probably know the answer to this. Do you move your body or move the remote?
Body.
Yes.
You feel so good when you get it out of your system. Whatever it is that you're feeling, let it spill onto the floor and move on.
Yes, exactly. Get rid of that cortisol. Yep. Now, are you a bag of almonds or a bag of Maltesers? Do you have Maltesers?
We don't have Maltesers, but we have Whoppers, which I believe are the same.
Yes, they are.
Chocolate-covered malt candies.
Yeah.
No, definitely the Maltesers. I mean, almonds... I can't get excited about eating a bag of almonds. I'll do it under duress, but no, I love a good bag of candy.
I know that little delicious lift of sugar, hits the spot. And do you ask for help or are you happy to hermit?
I've learned to ask for help. I'm helping. I mean, that's a lifetime of learning, but I've learned. And you know what? People like to help. You help people by giving them a chance to help. I understand that now because I love to help my friends. It makes me feel so good.
Yes.
And so I now know that when I'm asking people for help, it helps me and it also lets them be a good friend to me. And that helps everybody. So I've learned. I didn't know that until recently, but I'm asking for help all the time now.
Yeah, that's a good reminder to us all. Absolutely. Oh my gosh, Laura, thank you so much for your time today. It's been amazing to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. You gave me such a boost of confidence today. So thank you, because I'm definitely going to go out and strap my stuff to see if anybody feels my light beams.
Done. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Everyday Burnout Conversations. Please check the show notes for any links to items discussed today, and the original music and sound editing is by Chris Taylor. If you've enjoyed this podcast and have a spare few minutes, then it would be absolutely amazing if you could leave me a happy starry rating and review. It really does help this podcast reach a little further, and I'd just love it to land in the lap of those who, like me, last year are perhaps feeling isolated and lonely in their burnout struggle. Please note, this podcast is not intended as medical advice. Remember, you matter, so don't hesitate to reach out to your doctor or mental health professional for support if you're having a rough time. Wishing you a great week and take good care of yourself. Bye for now.